Hey there, fiber friends. I'm Sarah, your favorite knitting floor troll, and I'm here on the floor of my yarn lab, my craft room, to share with you a tip for how I go about placing buttons on finished cardigans. And I'm certainly not filming this on my floor because my craft table is definitely not covered in a sewing project right now. Anyways, I wanted to share with you today a tip for how I go about spacing out my buttons on a finished cardigan. And this project here is the Fernie Brea, and I probably am slaughtering the pronunciation because I'm pretty sure that's a Gaelic term, but the Fernie Brea cardigan by the lovely Kate Davies that I knit well over a year ago and finally wove in the ends and blocked it out. So it's ready for buttons so I can get to wearing it. Alright, so I have my cardigan all ready to go. This is a very boxy drop shoulder cardigan, and you knit the button bands on afterwards with a 1x1 rib and then put an I-cord bind off, and to make the buttonholes you make buttonholes in the I-cord bind off. So I don't know if you can see that there. So I made the buttonholes spaced out according to the pattern, and now I want to make sure that I put my buttons in the correct spots. I've got my buttons here, and now I want to make sure that I sew my buttons on in the correct spots so that when you close the cardigan up, you don't have any strange gaping or misalignment of the stripes. The way that I like to test drive my buttons is by using these locking plastic stitch markers. So I've got 10 buttonholes, so I'll need 10 locking stitch markers, and I'll just line them out. The first buttonhole up here is just sort of mid to low on the collar piece. So that one I will go ahead and eyeball the alignment of and pop a stitch marker in here. So if you look at my buttonholes, they kind of span from one knit column in the rib over a purl column, a knit column, and a purl column, and come down to the next knit column. So I would say that this buttonhole belongs to this middle purl column, which is lined up with this blue stripe, the second blue stripe. So I'm going to mark this buttonhole with the corresponding knit column in my ribbing on this side. This top one here, it looks like I've done something funky and don't have a matched number of stitches on both sides, because I'd say that these knit columns line up. This is the one that probably belongs to the buttonhole, and I appear to be missing the one on the top. So I'll line this stitch marker up here. And I'm just going to work my way down like that. So this next buttonhole here belongs, I'd say, to this knit column with this blue stripe, and I'll line that up. Come to my next buttonhole, and we've shifted down a little bit. We're coming in at the knit column just below the blue stripe. This buttonhole here, we're again below the blue stripe, so we're going to line these two up. This buttonhole here, taking this set and matching up these ones. This one here, I'd say belongs to this 3, so I'll go with this one. And this next one here belongs with the very last blue stripe. And the final one sort of hits right at the top of the ribbing of the hem, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th knit column up. Now that I have my stitch markers marking where I think the buttons should go, before I get to sewing those buttons on, you can go ahead and actually test it. So if I had smaller buttonholes, I would go ahead and just leave this closed over here and pull it through as if it was a button. But since these buttonholes are quite large, I'm going to actually lock my buttonhole spot to the buttonhole. Then I can pull on my cardigan like a pullover and see if the alignment of my stitch markers with the buttonholes is going to make the cardigan lay flat without any strange pulling or without any warping of the alignment of the pattern. So I'll just finish locking these together, and then I'll pop it on for a test drive. So I've got my cardigan on, and I did end up buttoning up those last 2 at the top, and as you can see, both button bands are lying nice and smooth. The stripes are lining up all the way down the front of the cardigan, so I feel confident in going ahead and sewing on my buttons now. Much better to do it temporarily like this than it would be to sew them on, try it on, and find out that you need to pick all those buttons off and give it a go again. Using removable stitch markers like this is how I've always gone about test driving the button locations on my knit garments. However, when I knit this Baby Surprise jacket by Elizabeth Zimmerman, she mentioned in the pattern for this, or possibly in her letters regarding this cardigan, a different way to go about marking your button placement, and I'll show you that real fast. So this is the Baby Surprise jacket, and you can see I haven't yet sewn on my buttons. I'm not sure if I will. Marshall's been wearing this and it looks super cute as just an open front cardigan. But you'll notice I have buttonholes on both sides of the button bands. And what Elizabeth Zimmerman recommends in the knitting of the button bands for this particular cardigan is that since you're knitting a sweater for a baby who may or may not be born yet, you don't know if you should put the buttons on the left or the right. I guess there is a historically gender association of buttons and which side closures should open and close on garments. That's a topic for a whole different video. But the nice thing is that when the baby is born, she says you can just go ahead and sew your buttons directly over the holes. That'll hide the hole. And the convenient thing is that your buttonholes will automatically line up with your buttons when you close the garment. I went ahead and knit this sweater that way. Like I said, I may never put buttons on, but when I knit my next cardigan for myself, I may go ahead and put buttonholes on both sides of my button bands in the knitting so that when I go ahead to sew my buttons on, they'll line up automatically. Alright, well, I'm off to sew the buttons on my cardigan. Marshall thought he would show how handsome he looks in his little cardigan, and I hope that this tip was useful for you. If you enjoy the videos that I'm sharing with you here from my Yarn Lab on YouTube, don't forget to make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss anything. Yes, you tell them. And give us a like, help us out by leaving a comment below. Hey, Smiley. That's all for now. Happy experimenting with fiber, because after all, this is the Yarn Lab. A burp? That's rude.